Imagine losing the love of your life. Her death shatters you, and in the silence of your heartache, you promise yourself that no one can ever take her place in your heart. But as time goes on, as the years stretch on, you notice some changes in you. You find yourself captivated by a new face, a new charm. Her beauty, her grace, it momentarily fills the void for you. You never really see it coming, but you let her in just a little. You never really thought that she could ever truly take her place. But little do you know, the woman you've let into your life has a far darker agenda, with poison as her weapon. And just like that, the promise you made to your late wife is now shattered. You are shattered. Sad, no? That's exactly what happened to Sultan Ibrahim Iskander, who ruled the Maldives from 1648 to 1687. Siri Kularamiba Iskander Katiri Bovana Maharidum, or simply just Sultan Ibrahim Iskander, was a king like no other. He was tall and fair, he had a kind heart, he was honorable, he was admired by his people, he was brave, he was wise, and he ruled with patience. He was just 18 or perhaps 28 years old when he became king. Historians are divided, with some claiming he was 18 while others insist he was 28. Either way, at an age where most young men are still figuring out their place in the world, Sultan Ibrahim Iskander became king. He didn't really rush into making decisions, especially when it came to punishing those who made mistakes. Instead, he was careful, he was thoughtful, he forgave people when he saw fit. He believed that everyone deserved a second chance in life. He treated the religious scholars with great respect and kindness. He always encouraged them to share their knowledge. The Sultan had a deep love for learning and wisdom. He believed that scholars held the key to the future of his kingdom, and so, without asking for anything in return, he honored them with grand titles and prestigious awards. The Sultan, he was like the greenest forest. He was full of life and wisdom. If only I could turn back time, I would eagerly go just to lay my eyes on the beauty of his presence, to experience the calm aura he exuded. Anyway, during his reign, the capital Male thrived as a trade hub. It welcomed ships from all over the world without any import or export taxes. But just 2 months into his rule, the Maldives was invaded by two brothers from Goa, Dom Louis and Dom Manuel. The Maldivians weren't quite ready to give in so easily. With what many called a divine intervention, the Maldives fought off the invaders, putting an end to the tribute payments to Goa and the Ali Raja of Kannanur. When I say Ali Raja, it's not one specific person. The title Ali Raja was used for any Muslim ruler of the Arakkal kingdom from 16th to early 19th century. So, the Sultan stopped the tribute payments paid to the Ali Raja of Kannanur. And this led to further vengeance from Ali Raja of Kannanur. And Sultan Ibrahim Iskander led a powerful attack. He captured Minikoi, more commonly known among us as Maluku. So he captured Maluku, and that really helped secure peace in the Maldives. Sure, the kingdom was thriving, but behind the palace walls, the king's heart was a battlefield of its own. His beloved queen, Mohamed Kaba'afa'anu had just passed away. The loss was unbearable, and the Sultan, heartbroken, chose not to remarry. Instead, he found comfort in the company of 8 women chosen from a group of slaves. Yet, despite the warmth of their presence, none could truly replace the love he had for his queen. Her absence remained in the palace. It was a silent reminder of a great love that once had burned brighter than the kingdom itself. Among the 8 women, there was one who captured the Sultan's heart above all others. She was a woman of Indian blood, the daughter of the navigator Malimi Hussain and a courtesan from Hindustan. Her name, Mariyam Kaba'afa'anu Rani Kilege. Her beauty was unmatched, so radiant, so captivating. When the Sultan laid eyes upon her for the first time, it was as if the world stood still. The connection between them was so undeniable, and soon she carried his child. She gave birth to a son, little baby Muhammad. And then began a new chapter in the Sultan's life. Or perhaps it was the closing of his story, the beginning of the end. When his son turned 1.5, the Sultan, moved by deep religious devotion, longed to visit Medina and pay his respects to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Before boarding on this sacred journey, he secured promises from the ministers, military leaders, and the judges that his son would inherit the throne. With this assurance in place, he entrusted the governance of the kingdom and the care of his son and his son's mother to Devadu Muhammad Fandiyarta Kurfan, and nobleman Muhyiddin was appointed as regent. The Sultan set sail on a grand fleet of 7 ships and he left for his Hajj. Mariam, the mother of the Sultan's son, was not content to merely stand in the shadows. She was determined to secure power for herself, so she sidelined Muhyiddin. With her extraordinary beauty and her magnetic charm that seemed to entangle all those around her, she began to weave a web of influence among the senior courtiers. Whispers of her enticing all the influential figures spread through the palace, with rumors claiming she shared her bed with them to solidify their loyalty. When the Sultan came back, Mariam was not quite ready to give the throne back to the Sultan, but there was nothing she could really do. The Sultan was back, the king's back. The throne has to be the king's, right? No, at least not for Mariam. That night, as the Sultan rested after his long journey, Mariam served him a glass of milk. Her face was calm, but her heart hid a terrible secret. Trusting her completely, the Sultan, he drank it without any second thoughts. The glass of milk she gave him with so much love, it was laced with deadly poison. The poison worked as the Sultan closed his eyes for the very last time, and he drifted into an eternal sleep, betrayed by the one he loved. The following morning, the Sultan was laid to rest in a tomb that had been prepared long in advance, as though fate had already written its tragic conclusion. The nation mourned, but little did they know that the true tragedy had only just begun. Sultan Ibrahim Iskander's reign had lasted 39 years, 6 months and 10 days. But his legacy was snatched away by the ambition of a cunning lady. The kingdom was handed over to his young son Muhammad. His reign began on the same day his father died. He became Sultan Kuda Muhammad, Sri Maniranloka Maharidu, the 6-year-old king of the Maldives. The keys to the kingdom, once held by the Sultan, now belonged to those who controlled the inner workings of the court. The treasury was no longer guarded by the loyalty, but by the hands of those who knew how to wield power from behind the throne. Even the servants, once trusted with daily tasks, were kept at a distance, allowed only enough to do their work. Nothing more, nothing less. The palace was filled with tension as Mariam grew more determined to hold on to the power she had. She knew she needed to act quickly, so she convinced people like Fuladu Bodubanderi Kaleyfaanu and Dhivehiraajjeyge to join her cause. Together, they persuaded the military leaders to back them, offering them money and promises of more power in return of their support. In the palace, the schemers listened as Mariam vented with frustrations. She complained that the king's advisors were making life difficult for her and the royal allowance barely lasted a month. "The kingdom deserves better," she said. "The kingdom deserves better." Indeed, it did. The soldiers supporting Mariam jumped into action, and after a heated argument, they removed Femfushivela from power and sent him to exile. His wealth was taken and added to royal treasury, and with the ministers and courtiers gone, Mariam became the regent, fully in control of Maldives. The kingdom was now hers to rule. Mariam was known for her scandalous behavior. Her desires led her to fixate on Mohamed Ameen Didi, the son of late Sultan Ibrahim Iskander's brother, her own son's cousin. When he refused her order, she acted in anger, accusing him of plotting against the throne. As punishment, she sent him to Formula. Mariam began reshaping the government. She appointed her brother Ali as the new prime minister and then handed ministerial positions to her other brothers and family members. She cemented her influence further by marrying into a man who was given the title of Doshimena Kilege. Doshimena Kilege is the highest order and title awarded by the king of the Maldives. So imagine, through such strategic power plays, Mariam truly ensured her control over the monarchy and the future of her family. She surrounded herself with a group of young, attractive men who were given the title of junior ministers, but their real function was far from administrative. Their role was to cater to her personal desires, taking no part in the running of the government. Even when her husband was around, these young men were free to interact with her with no restrictions. Her husband, who was completely under her influence, he was powerless and he was too afraid to confront her, much less divorce her. The men who had once been ministers under the late Sultan Ibrahim Iskander's rule found themselves reduced to figureheads. They were weak, they were easily controlled by Mariam, and despite their titles, they had little say in how things worked. Mariam's reign created deep unrest among the religious scholars as well. Once loved by the Sultan Ibrahim Iskander, she and her followers openly defied Islamic religious values, engaging in immoral behavior as a deliberate act to provoke and frustrate these scholars. Unable to bear the situation, many religious scholars chose to leave the Maldives, including Hasan Tajuddin. Now, Hasan Tajuddin was a man of unshakable honesty and a deep devotion to truth. As a judge, he worked to bring about meaningful improvement in the society. He was a fierce defender of Islamic principles, and he left behind a legacy of extraordinary service to the country's history. Taarikh Islami Diba Mahal tells the long history of the Maldives, and it's the first book written by a local author. That's who Tajuddin is. There was no way he was going to stand there and watch this happen. It was not just the religious scholars. Many of the nobility in Male too secretly fled to Ali Raja in Kannanur because they were unable to digest the corruption that was going on around them. The religious community, though silent publicly, they were filled with disdain for her lifestyle. They whispered among themselves, predicting that a country ruled by such an immoral figure would soon face divine retribution. They believed her reckless way of life could not last forever and that the consequences of her actions would eventually come to pass. It was only a matter of time before the wrath of Allah would eventually catch up with her. When King Muhammad grew a little older, he didn't like the way his mother's family behaved. He cared more for his father's relatives. The only male relative left was Mohamed Ameen Didi, who was sent to Formula. King Muhammad brought him back to Mali and treated him so well, which did not sit right with his mother at all. Hassan Tajuddin too came back to Mali, and worried that Hassan Tajuddin might cause them trouble, he was made to stay on his ship in the hot sun for 2 whole days, with no one allowed to visit him, including his friends and family. In the end, Tajuddin was sent away, this time to Gang in Khidhumaiykuraa atoll, which is Lamu Gang in today's terms. Remember the people who had gone to Kannanur to get help from Ali Raja? Yeah, so they arrived in Thaareekhuge atoll, which is the current Alif Ha Dal area. Yeah, so they came to Thaareekhuge atoll and they captured locals, tied them up and took their belongings. Now, I understand why Ali Raja was doing it. Their thirst for the power over Maldives was always something that knew no boundaries. But what could really explain the indifference of the Mali elites? How could they allow such a tragedy to unfold upon their own people? Was it their thirst for power that blinded them so much? Or was it the deep-rooted classism in them? The belief that the suffering of these islanders mattered little compared to their own comfort? The dark divide between the elites of Mali and the islanders, it's always been very evident. It's a divide of power, a divide of privilege. When the king and his mother heard about this invasion, they immediately took action. The ministers and armed forces gathered and large boats were prepared. With weapons loaded, the army set sail for Thaareekhuge to confront the invaders. As the vessels from Mali approached, the enemy, realizing that they were outmatched, they quickly abandoned their positions and fled in their ship. The victory was quite instant, and soon the victorious fleet returned back to Mali, successful in their protection of the islands. When Mariyam heard about the success of her forces, she decided to take a short trip to meet them. She sailed in a large boat protected from the sun with the king and her special friends. They were all in high spirits as they sailed to greet the army. On their way back, they spent a fun night at Bandos Island, celebrating with local men and women. The next day, as the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, the air was thick with the sound of celebration. Their grand boat with rich decorations was anchored at Dunidu Island. The air was filled with joy, and the guns fired in a roaring salute. But in that moment of festivities, a single spark from one of the wick holes found its way into a container of gunpowder. The flames exploded with terrifying speed. Screams filled the air as the flames consumed everything in their path, burning the bodies of the helpless, sending them crashing back onto the wreckage of the ship or into the merciless sea below them. The boat, once a symbol of victory, was now nothing more than a charred ruin sinking into the waters, leaving only devastation and sorrow in its wake. The king was still alive, but his mother had been completely destroyed in the explosion. The undamaged ships rushed to the site of disaster, desperately searching for survivors. Some were found, their bodies were terribly burned, clinging to life, while others, they were already dead. Their lifeless bodies were recovered and taken away, but the king's mother and her closest companions were nowhere to be found. The sea had claimed them. The young king was quickly carried to shore and rushed into treatment, but his injuries were too severe. Despite efforts to save him, he died. Only a few survivors among the victims of the explosion remained, and their lives were forever scarred. The king was only 10 years 11 months and 6 days old. He had ruled for just 4 years, 1 month and 19 days. The once beautiful Mariyam, whose charm and appeal had captivated all who saw her, even just for once, is now recognized as the burnt queen. Her radiant face, once the embodiment of grace, had turned into a blackened, charred mask of horror. Her name would forever be linked to her dark fate. Her once celebrated beauty was overshadowed by the tragic legacy of her demise. She will forever be etched in history as the burnt queen. This is the haunting story of Mariyam Kaba'afa'anu Rani Kilege, or more commonly known as the Endhi Mariyanbu of the Maldives. As a Mariyam myself, I can't quite find the words to explain how I feel about her story, but I would like to quote her here. The kingdom deserves better. Yes, the kingdom deserved better. The kingdom did not deserve to witness such a brutal act. Their kind king murdered in cold blood because of the greed of power, the pain of a young life lost, in the most brutal way a person can die, all because of a mother's greedy desires. The people, the land, they deserved so much more. They deserved peace. They deserved justice. I think her story is a reminder of how fragile power can be and how easily it can be twisted, leaving behind the ruins of what could have been. What are your thoughts? I'm quite intrigued to know, actually. Until we are able to unfold another tale beyond the sunny side, this is me, Tata, signing off. Stay safe.